Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I know it's been quite some time since my last video. Missed 2 weeks of power rankings. If you are on the Discord or if you watched the last video and you knew, I was traveling, I went to a wedding, and then when I came back, I lost my voice a little bit. So we're going to jump into it. We're going to go over the last 3 series of all the teams in the playoff race and kind of give a prediction of what I think is going to happen. If you are new to the channel, watching this video, please subscribe. We're on our way to 1,000 subs. That's the goal to get to by the end of the MLB season. We're going to be talking football. There's going to be betting and stuff like that as well on the channel. Football, hockey, that's pretty much my 3 core sports. But guys, we're going to jump into it here with the MLB playoff race. As typical, we always start these kind of videos talking about the American League. There's really a story of 2 different races going on. The main one, of course, is the wild card, but we cannot forget the race between the Baltimore Orioles and the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, these 2 teams have been battling all season long. Tampa Bay was on top for a majority of the season. A couple months ago, Orioles took it over, and they haven't really looked back. They just played a 6 series against each other, splitting it 2-2. We could see these guys in the ALCS, but whoever doesn't win the division is going to have to play in that wild card round. So that's a little bit risky. So there is a lot to play for here. But I think looking at the remaining games, I do give a slight edge to one team. Just going to go over it quickly here. Baltimore, they're kicking off a 4-game set. It's going on right now, actually, against the Cleveland Guardians. And then they go in and they play Washington and Boston. So if we look at it, they're playing 3 teams now down the stretch here with a 2-game lead in the division. All the teams they're playing are sub 500. So you would think, given that Tampa Bay has 2 series against Toronto, pretty powerhouse team, a team that we're going to talk about in a second in the wild card race, very important games. And their 3rd series in the middle there is against Boston. They definitely have a much harder schedule, so they kind of have to go like 7-2 over their last 9 games, while Baltimore does much worse in sub 500 against sub 500 teams. I just don't see that happening, so I do expect Baltimore to walk away with the division and be #1 in the American League. Now, it gets pretty interesting when we start talking about the wild card, and I don't know really how I'm going to do this. I'm kind of winging it as I go here. But we have, right now, Houston Astros on top of the division. They've played 1 more game than the other 2 teams, who are actually bone tied in that division. Half a game up, so they've played 1 more game. They won it. They're half a game up on those 2 teams. And we also have the Blue Jays, who are 1 game up in the wild card standings on these 2 teams. But they're playing right now. They're down 3-0 in the 1st inning to the New York Yankees. So that could be a half a game when all is said and done. It's wild. If we start looking at some of the schedules here, I'm going to start with the Toronto Blue Jays, who have probably one of the toughest schedules of them, playing 6 games against Tampa Bay, who needs to win, needs Baltimore to struggle. Those are going to be tough. They've always struggled Tampa Bay for a number of years. This season, they've looked all right against them. I think they match up pretty well. The one thing that the Jays have going for them, in between that, they have the sandwich with the Yankees. They're going to see Garrett Cole again in that series because that's next week. He's going to have a little bit of rest. You're going to play Garrett Cole again, so that's could potentially be a tough loss there. But the one thing the Blue Jays do have going for them is these 2 teams play each other 7 times in these next week and a half. That means there's guaranteed going to be 7 losses between one of these 2 teams. It could go all one way or the other. So that's going to be a big part of it. Technically, the Jays, if they just win 6 of their last 9 games, I guess 10 games if you count today's, they are guaranteed to get in just based off that pure stat. So I do technically think the Jays are going to get in. What position they finish in might be 6th, might be 5th. Obviously not going to be 4th because whoever loses this is going to be 4th. But yeah, so Jays have the Yankees, they have Tampa Bay, and then we move on to, let's just talk about Seattle first. I think they technically have it a little harder, but really it comes down to the 7 games between these 2. As long as it does not a 4-3 split, those 7 games are going to be what makes the difference. If one of those teams wins 5, they're going to be in, the other team's going to be out. If one of those teams wins 4, maybe there's a little bit of a shot. And the big difference being here, Seattle in the middle of the 2 series, they play Houston, whereas Texas plays the Angels. So if Seattle, let's say, wins that first series 2-1, then they go to Houston, they have a tougher series. Texas can go into LA and sweep that and be right back into it. And then that last 4-game series that these 2 teams are going to play is going to be for all the marbles. It's going to be excellent. This is honestly why the baseball, changing the playoff format, has been awesome, because we're playing meaningful baseball. It's basically playoff baseball now, right down the stretch. But let's not forget, Houston is only a half game up in this division. The only difference here is they have probably one of the easiest schedules left. They play Kansas City over the weekend. If they manage to pull out a sweep, which you would think very capable, at least they're going to win 2. They'll have a little bit more of a lead because these 2 are going to be battling over the weekend. And then they play Seattle. Seattle's going to be playing for their lives very much, so that's going to be a very key series. They've played Seattle. Those series have been very exciting all season long, so could mean a lot. But then they get to finish the season against Arizona. Again, it's a team that's right there in the thick of it, in a playoff hunt. We're going to talk about them when we start talking about the National League over here. But it is a little bit of a prediction video. I do have to predict one of these teams missing. I already talked about Baltimore making the playoffs. I think Houston is going to walk away with this division just based on that. I think Toronto's going to sneak in there. And so it's going to come down to how these 2 teams match up. And honestly, right now, I know back in August I predicted Texas to win the World Series, but based on this schedule, I think Seattle has the better team. They should be able to maybe get it out. I don't know. Like, this is 50-50. I'm going to go with Seattle just because they're somewhat my home team, I guess. And I got pretty pissed when I went to Toronto and Texas swept us. So a little bit of hate there going into that. So this is my prediction right now. Again, these games are going to be wild. It's super exciting. I think the only thing that for me is pretty much a lock in these predictions is Baltimore taking the division. Moving along, let's talk about the National League. Before I jump into it, I'm not going to talk about any of the division leaders. Those are pretty much already secured. We got the Dodgers, we got the Braves, we got the Brewers, all of them secured. Can't really get caught. The first wild card spot, so we're basically talking about the wild card. The first wild card spot is the Phillies. They're 4 games up. I didn't even look at their schedule because I expect them to get in. I'm not even going to put them on the board because, in my opinion, they're going to take that first spot. But then we start to get a little bit excited. I'm going to start tossing these teams up right now based on where they are currently seated. And then we can start talking about their schedules going down the stretch here. So we've got 5 teams and we've got 2 spots. We'll start from the bottom. San Francisco, there are 3 games out from that spot. They have to hop 2 other teams in there, and they have the hardest schedule of all the teams that are left in the National League. They play the Dodgers this weekend, starting today, 4-game series. Then they play San Diego, and then they play the Dodgers again. So, wow, even if they go 500 in those games, which would be, in my opinion, a miracle, it's not going to be enough to pass these teams because they're 3 games behind here, and they got to hop 2 teams that also would have to have atrocious records. Not going to happen. Don't see that happening. Next up, technically, these guys are in standings-wise around. Cincinnati, they play Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and St. Louis. I think of all the teams left, they have the easiest schedule, and I think this is going to benefit them very significantly. They got to continue to play a winning baseball strategy. Of course, they're only 1 game out of a playoff spot. Cubs have gone 3-7 over the past 10 games. It's a little bit of concerning. And then Cubs also have somewhat of a tougher schedule down the stretch here. They play Colorado this weekend. If they don't win that series, I would consider the Cubs done. And then Atlanta starting next week. It's really the last week of the season. I'm not sure. A team like Atlanta, are they going to be playing all their guys, everything's secured up, or are they going to be waiting for the playoffs? I do expect Atlanta to play it through because they're going to have a couple days off when they have that first round bye. So the Cubs are in trouble in that series for sure. Of course, they've played Atlanta pretty good in the first series they met this season. And then to end the season, they're going to be playing Milwaukee. That could be a situation where they have to find a sweep in order to secure this last playoff spot. I don't like how they've been playing. I would expect at this point the rankings starting to look like this. So Cincinnati, easy schedule down the stretch. A lot of poorer teams with St. Louis in there, Cleveland in there, Pittsburgh in there. All teams missing the playoffs. All teams they match up against pretty well and can take wins. And then that leaves us with these two teams who I technically think are going to be the teams that get in. Miami, they play Milwaukee, they play the Mets, they play Pittsburgh. They've fought all season long to get to this point. At the beginning of the season, I had no faith in them whatsoever. And then they fell a little bit after that start. It was pretty great for them, but they started to fall back to earth. But they're in a position now. They made some trade deadline moves. They're right there in the thick of it. I do think they're the strongest team. They're half a game out with Milwaukee, Mets, and Pittsburgh. I think I already said that. But guys, I think if they can play maybe 600 baseball, win 6 of their last 9 here, I think the Miami Marlins will get in. That leaves us with Arizona, who plays the Yankees. And then they have a great series. I think this is the pivotal one that will help Arizona clinch. They play the Chicago White Sox. I really think they're going to go in there hype AF, and they're going to find a sweep. And then they're going to end the season playing the Houston Astros. And that series could very well mean whoever wins it, they could win the division. They could make the playoffs. Whoever loses it could be disastrous for either one. Can't forget that Houston technically could miss the playoffs overall. But there you guys have it. This is the 2023 playoff race. I talked really fast. I talked without props, without writing down who everyone's playing. So let's just do a quick rundown. They're matching up pretty good. They have an easy schedule. Rays have a somewhat tougher schedule, 6 games against the Jays. These two teams, Seattle and Texas, are going to be battling it out hard, with Houston at a little bit of advantage in that division because of it. We have San Fran, toughest schedule going down the stretch, furthest out from the playoffs, probably like a 3% chance of making the playoffs. Cubs have been playing pretty bad baseball as of late. They do have a somewhat tough schedule against 2 top division playoff teams and all these other teams hot on their deck. So they got to play probably 650, 700 baseball down the stretch. I don't know if it's possible, whereas Reds, they have the schedule to be able to do it. I think between these two teams, they're going to battle for that last spot. And right now, I'm giving the edge to the Marlins because I just think they're a little bit better of a team. And I think they deserve it a little bit more. And guys, there you have it. My predictions, how the playoffs are going to go down heading into the playoffs. And yeah, we'll do one last power rankings this Sunday just to wrap up the season. And then it's playoff time, guys. Hopefully you guys are watching some football too. Stay tuned for the channel. Lots to come. Thanks for watching. Peace out.